Perfect.
All right.
So
Well,
I just disabled the waiting room and started the recording, which will be sent out to everyone as well.
very good. Okay, we'll be starting in just a few minutes. Thank you for joining us. We are the NodeXL team at the Social Media Research Foundation, and we'll be talking today about networks, social networks, and social media networks for the purpose of marketing. So I hope you'll be patient as we await just a few additional participants, and then I'll be introducing my co-presenters, Harold and Wasim, in just a moment. I think we'll probably start it at around 5 minutes past the hour, so we have another 2 minutes. While we're in that waiting time, if you'd like, you can put an email address into the chat, and we'll be sending out free trial licenses of NodeXL to our requesters. We'll give you a month or so to get some experience hands-on with the tool.
Mark, actually, we've already done that. So everybody who signed up for this event should have received an email with the trial license for 1 month. But anyone who hasn't,
that's a good idea.
Just enter your email and I will send that to you.
Very good. All right, we're about a minute away from start time. Okay. About 20 seconds away. I think we're about to start. All right. And I'll just repeat the offer that Harold has just made. We are going to provide trial licenses for all of our attendees today. If you've signed up previously, you should already have a trial license. Thank you, Harold. And if not, just drop your email address into the chat and we'll send one your way. All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody for gathering here today. Thank you so much for the interest in NodeXL for marketing. NodeXL is a piece of software that makes network analysis something that non-programmers can do. Part of what our time today will be spent on is to explain why network analysis is the kind of thing that you would want to do. But it is a powerful methodology for understanding what we call collections of connections. Collections of connections are the material from which networks are born. It's whenever one person does something with somebody else in a way that is observable, measurable, something that we can quantify. And our message here today is that when you think about the world in the form of networks, we have a motto, we say, think link. When you can think about networks, what is otherwise a confusing environment can become much more comprehensible. Networks help organize what is otherwise chaotic. So we are interested in helping people who are interested in phenomena that might metaphorically look like this, which is to say a kind of swarm, a flock, not a swarm, these are birds, not insects. This is a flock, in this case of starlings. It's a kind of bird. And when they get together, they form these amazing amorphous patterns. This is called a murmuration of starlings, kind of beautiful. And in some ways, it's a nice metaphor for hashtag, for discussion group, for subreddit, for any collection of information in which a group of people are completely self-organizing and talking about a topic that matters to them. The challenge we have with this metaphor is that humans don't quite work like this. Humans are not birds. And if we were birds, we might be a different bird than a starling. We might be a chicken, because as you may know, chickens have a pecking order. They have hierarchy. These birds do not have hierarchy. Humans do. What's that mean? It means some humans, or in this case birds, would have more power than the others. And in fact, sociologically, we could argue less than 1% of the participants in a social media environment have this power. And we can show that mathematically using the methods of network analysis. So a network perspective is a different view than the typical perspective we see when we measure social media. A common measurement is a number, and it tells you how many of something is in some data set. So we might find out that we have 10 tweets or 10 followers or 10 retweets or posts and upvotes. Those kinds of things might happen. We might have a number, and it's just a simple number. It's the measure of how much, it's the volume. But a network perspective is different. A network perspective says, yes, it is true, there are 10 dots. And if we count them, I think we come up with 10 dots. There are 10 dots there. But when you look at a network, we gain something called structure. Structure means that not all the dots are equal. And so you have not necessarily been trained in network theory, but just looking at this image, I would like to ask you some network theory questions, like who is the most important dot in this network? And I'll give you a hypothesis. It's Jane. Is Jane, and I don't know if you can see it very clearly, but this is the dot for Jane. There's Jane right there. Is Jane, just based on intuition, the most important person in this network? No. How about somebody else? How about Diane? Diane's a really big circle, and there are a lot of lines connecting to Diane. Maybe Diane is the most important person in this network. And by some definitions, yes, maybe, yeah. But then there's Heather. Heather is in a different position, has half the number of connections as Diane, but in network theory, we could make the argument Heather has more power. She has more centrality. She has a position in the network, a location. And you may remember from real estate. Do you remember the 3 most important things in real estate? Location, 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 right? Here in network theory, we say the 3 most important things are position, position, position. Where in the network are you? How connected are you to others? How are those people connected to others, and so on? And so we could make the argument that Heather is more powerful than Diane in the following way. Let's remove Diane. Just mentally, if you can, pretend Diane's not there and ask yourself the question, is anybody disconnected? Is there anybody who cannot connect to somebody else now? And the answer turns out to be no. Every connection Diane provides to others, somebody else could also do. You could work around Diane. So if Diane goes on vacation, it may be that nobody notices. What about Heather? If Heather leaves, what happens to Ike and Jane? And this is a key concept. Heather doesn't have to have the most number of connections. Heather just has to have connections that are unique, special. They link across the graph. And so we could argue that Heather, even though the numbers associated with her are not that high, Some other numbers, in particular, this betweenness centrality thing, she has the highest score in the network. And so this idea of centrality is a key concept in social media and in social media network theory. And it's the thing that we want to help you be able to leverage, to be able to, as we like to say, think link. So again, is the number of things in the box enough to predict what the thing in the box is? Well, here we have two boxes of Legos. They have the same number of bricks, but one is the X-Wing fighter and the other one is Minecraft. The number of bricks in the box does not predict what is in the box. We would have to describe how the bricks connect to each other in order to understand what is in the box. And so our goal is to draw a picture of a hashtag, and where it used to be, I mean, Twitter's in flux right now, we have to admit, but wherever social media exists, we are interested in drawing a picture. And the reason is that in many cases, pictures tell a story that is better than big data. Here's some big data, well, small data, but here's the idea of why we want to draw the picture rather than just get the numbers. There are two data points here that I think should be removed because they are outliers. Can you find them for me? In addition, so one of these XY pairs, two of these XY pairs probably shouldn't be in the data set. Can you find them? Second task, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 columns across the top. One of these things is not like the other. If you had to remove one, which one do you want to remove and why? Maybe you're thinking statistics would help. Maybe, maybe not. The 4 distributions have the exact same statistics. They have the same summary statistics. So I'm going in under a second to show you, rather you in under a second can answer this question. There's about 10 of us here. We're approaching a minute of time talking about this slide. So that's 10 human brain minutes. And I don't think we're answering the question yet. Remember, 2 of these data points should go and 1 of the whole data sets should be removed. Not clear. Our brains are not good at this. Or are they? So here, your brain's going to answer those 2 questions. What are the 2 data points to remove, and which of the 3 or 4 data sets do we want to get rid of in less than 1 second? Your brain will do it in about 300 to 400 milliseconds. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. There it is. Same data. Here's a data point. There's a data point. And of all 4, I'm going to get rid of number 4. That is something easy for my brain to do when I see the data, not so good when I see this. Apparently, rows and columns, new. 1604, Rene Descartes comes up with rows and columns, you know, the matrix, the original one. And then, but we've been doing color and shape and pattern for at least 1.5 million years. And so we're better at this. So we would like to draw pictures of groups of people interacting through computation, computer mediated collective action. And we would like to be able to see the shape of the crowd. We would like to understand, when was there a spike? We would like to understand when new words came into the network. We would like to understand social media. And that's because crowds really matter. There's almost nothing you can't accomplish when 750,000 of your friends get together. But increasingly, when people get together, they get together online. They don't necessarily get together in physical spaces as much anymore. And so when we point at this collection of online discussion, we have a similar challenge to Anscombe's quartet. Who's the leader of this discussion? Are there divisions or subgroups, or is this all just one big group talking about the same topic? Do they talk about the topic in slightly different ways? Are there conflicts? Was there a moment of peak activity? Well, you as a scholar or a researcher or an analyst or a marketing professional, you are a human. And I'm going to project that you maybe can read 10 tweets in a minute, 10 posts in a minute, and that means that you can read about 600 messages an hour. The challenge is that there are plenty of topics that generate 6,000 messages a minute. So The gear ratio is not good. The human to social phenomena ratio, not good. We are not able to consume that much information. And so, well, again, in less than 300 milliseconds, though, if we were to present the information properly, our brains might be able to help us. And so there we go. This is a group of people forming, in fact, more than one group. They're talking about politics. They don't agree with one another. And we can tell that group one and group two have very much opposed political views, and we can tell what those political views are by looking at the words used by the people in the cluster. And so if you want to deal with climate change and taxing Wall Street, you're probably left of center. And if you like the Tea Party and Rubio and the GOP, you're probably right of center. We are talking about the United States here. So to be technically accurate, there are only two political parties in the United States, a right-wing party and a far right-wing party. So that, take this with a grain of salt. So what we are all about is the understanding of networks. And networks are not that easy to understand and visualize, and in many cases, naive versions of network analysis give us results that aren't that useful. It's true. But this is the before view. Same data, again, less than a few hundred milliseconds, we can get much better insight into the same data. So this is like a photograph that is fuzzy, out of focus, it's blurry. This is an in focus picture of the same image, same data, better view, something we call the group in a box layout. And it is an example of the ways in which challenges in network theory can be overcome. And network theory can be used to achieve your goals, which I believe revolve around trying to gain insight into large volumes of data and large numbers of people interacting with one another. We draw these pictures in a variety of ways. 3D rotating versions also are interesting. And when we do this, what we do is get some insights. We learn things about that collection of people and the collection of connections that form among them. And one key concept in network analysis is that there are 3 levels of analysis. Most of the time, you are already familiar with the bottom and the top level. The bottom level is the micro level, that's an individual. So we are accustomed to learning how many posts or messages or replies any individual has. The second level is the macro level, that's the everybody. That's the things, again, we're familiar with, how many messages, how many people. What's very new in network theory is the meso level, the idea that we can identify clusters. So micro, meso, macro, we can do all 3 of these things with network theory. It's not necessarily the case that we can do it all the same with other methods. So network metrics allow us to describe the position of each person within a complex web of relationships. And the big takeaway here is that everything social media does generates one of these. All social media is a network. It can't be social media if it is not a network. And if it is a network, then network analysis can tell us important things about the things that you as a marketing person might be interested in. And so let's go look at those things. Here we have a list of things that you could conceivably use NodeXL to achieve, certainly social listening. We will show you in a second that we have been making maps of things like YouTube and Twitter for over a decade. And we are now very pleased to announce that today, the new Reddit importer for NodeXL has been released. And you should expect that, although the news, there's a lot of turbulence in the news. You may have heard about the changes at Twitter. Anybody here not heard about changes at Twitter? In particular, data access has been limited. Most of us who have been collecting data from Twitter are no longer able to do so. I am here to report, though, that that is probably going to be a temporary issue. A lot of the data analysis community will now be switching to something called web scraping. So expect to see Twitter return to the NodeXL menu sometime in the next 6 to 8 weeks. But in the meantime, we are very pleased to announce that we do now have a Reddit importer for NodeXL, and I'll be showing you that in just a second. So let's go over to the NodeXL graph gallery. This is another place we'd love to direct your attention, and I'll just share the link here in the chat. The NodeXL graph gallery is sort of like Instagram for graphs. We were going to call it Instagraph, but we were frightened by Mr. Zuckerberg's lawyers. So Instagraph, Instagram, it allows groups of people with cameras to take pictures and share them. NodeXL graph gallery lets people with copies of NodeXL to take pictures and share them. And in many cases, we have pictures of topics. For example, this is the word marketing from Twitter from a day or two ago. Each of those little dots, that's a Twitter user. And the lines between them, that's the act of I replied to you, I retweeted you, I mentioned you. There are lots of ways in Twitter to have one person connect to another. Other systems, different ways. For example, in an email, there's really only one way. I can either reply to you or not. Now, there is something called the forward. That's when I take your message and I send it to somebody else. So forwards, replies, initial turns. Email has a smaller set of ways two dots can connect to each other. But in Twitter, we've got reply, retweet, mention, and so on. And each of these lines represents one of those kinds of connections. What you could notice is, wow, that's a big like wagon wheel, hub and spoke structure. And indeed, we see others, smaller ones. Here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one. There's a lot of these wagon wheels with somebody in the middle and a lot of spokes coming out of them. That's what it looks like when somebody is a celebrity, a broadcaster, or what we might think of as the mayor of your hashtag. This is the thought leader, the influencer. This one person is getting the overwhelming majority of the attention. And that is a really important concept in social media, that it is not an egalitarian environment. It's not democratic. It's not uniform. It's a remarkably skewed, highly skewed environment. In other words, if you aren't a winner, you are a loser in social media. And only a tiny number of these people are the winners. How do we know? Well, here they are. These are the 10 most central people shown in these graphs. It's hard to zoom in and see who's that guy. Well, we list them here. In the report, we'll even tell you the things about the other hashtags that are being used. We will give you a summary block of text that is essentially the description of this image. So this image contains 15,938 Twitter users. That's a lot of people. And if you were going to read all these messages, that's a lot of tweets. There are 17,000 tweets, and they got retweeted 10,000 times. So you have 20-some thousand tweets to read. And at the rate of 60 tweets, let's see, what was it? 10 tweets a minute, 600 tweets an hour. You've got a week of work just to read the tweets. And I guess I would like to argue that maybe you shouldn't read them all, right? You really should not read all of these things, because it would take too long and not all of them are worth it. And so what I will show you is, let's see, I think I've got a good Power BI map here handy. What we can do is turn that data into what is now called a dashboard. And a dashboard is going to allow us to see the data in a very different way. For example, be able to plot all of this data into a geographic map and get a sense of where on Earth people are talking about a topic. And that would even allow us to zoom in on certain parts of the map and discover what's going on in that particular area. So let's see if I can zoom in on Scotland. I know that Wasim is up in Scotland. Let's see if this is Wasim, not clear. But well, that's Edinburgh, it's close, Wasim, not you, but close. And then you are somewhere around here, I suspect, somewhere between Glasgow and Edinburgh. So, but this allows us to actually drill down and click on an individual, click on that person, and we'll actually see exactly who that person is. So that's social design. And with one more click, we could be looking at that person's Twitter profile. So these tools are all about addressing these tasks. You would like to have insight into topics like hashtag marketing, digital marketing, the name of a product, the name of a brand, the name of an activity. It would be interesting to know what's happening in these environments without reading all the messages. And the challenge is then, can we find a machine that will augment us to allow us to be the cyborg that we need to be in order to be able to consume 20, 30, 40,000 tweets and do so with comprehension. So you can find lots of resources for us on the web. Here, I'm going to share some of these. This is the SMR Foundation website. That's our organization. We are the home of NodeXL. There are lots of resources for NodeXL users. And one of the key concepts in NodeXL is that there is a notion of automation, that almost all of this process, once set up correctly, can in fact be performed with just a few clicks. We have, in fact, here, here's some NodeXL. And NodeXL is essentially an add-in for Excel. If you're running Windows in Office, and you already have Excel, there's a good chance that you already have Excel, then you are able to very quickly use the NodeXL Pro menu to access data, analyze data, visualize data. And in this case, we have data here, I think, about social media marketing, and we'll be visualizing that in just a few seconds. So let me just show you what it looks like when you get to NodeXL. Here we go. NodeXL is a ribbon in your Excel menu. And when you access that ribbon, these words at the bottom of each section, data, graph, visual properties, analysis, options, show, hide, and help. These are the controls needed to get, analyze, visualize, write a report, and publish data about collections of connections. And so in this case, if we wanted to, we could go into the NodeXL Pro menu, go to data, click on import. We get an import menu. One of the choices is the Twitter search network. We could click on that and we get a dialog box. You type in a query and you hit OK. Now, admittedly, after you hit OK, time passes. How much time? Some time later. How much time? Depends on the access to Twitter, depends on the volume of the data, and then it depends on the speed of your computer, and then it depends on the complexity of the data. And how long are we talking about? 8 to 10 to 15 minutes to get data out of Twitter. That's the way it used to be anyway. And then depending on the complexity of the data, 10, 15, 20 minutes of calculation to generate a result that looks like this. So this is the collection of connections that form around a topic being discussed in social media, and it gives us insights. It tells us a story about the nature of that population, what they're doing, who their leaders are, how they're divided. So for example, you can see that there are these little rectangular boxes. They're numbered, they're labeled. Each one is a subgroup, a subcommunity. It's a cluster in the network. They are gathered together by a force we use in sociology. We have a name for it. It's called homophily. You may know it better under the phrase birds of a feather flock together. So people who share common opinions tend to be in these clusters, and people who have different opinions tend to be in different clusters, and those different clusters often don't connect too much. And so gaining an insight and an overview into a collection of connections with just a few clicks using Excel, that's our value proposition. We are about helping people think, link, without having to become software developers. I see a question about Facebook groups. The answer was yes. It used to be that we had access to Facebook groups. And no, Mr. Zuckerberg turned off their API and we lost access to Facebook groups. But there is interesting new activity because of the recent changes at Twitter. And I don't know if everybody is familiar with what has just happened at Twitter, but of course, Mr. Musk purchased Twitter about 7 months ago and has been making major changes to the platform. And one of those changes is to block data access for the research and marketing community, which is a shame, but that's blocked through the API. We are now likely to see a big migration away from API access back to web scraping. And so the NodeXL team is dedicated to exploring web scraping of Twitter. You should see Twitter restored to our menu in the next 6 to 8 weeks. In the meantime, there is just recently added, in fact, I'll show you just now, we've got brand new off the compiler import, and you'll now see that we now have a Reddit importer right there. So what can we access right now and still access? We have Flickr data. We have Reddit data. We still have some access into Twitter. And if you have a topic of interest, I think I could map, if you want to nominate into the chat topics of interest, I'm happy to make some sample maps. And even if we can't finish them by the time we are done in this hour, I can send them to you afterwards. So if there is a hashtag or a topic that you would like to see a sample map and report for, you go ahead and drop it into the chat. But then there is, of course, also YouTube. And what about Twitter? What about TikTok? We believe that, well, first of all, TikTok does not have an API. On the other hand, TikTok will be open to scraping. And so web scraping seems to be the big new thing. And we will no doubt follow in that technology trend towards web scraping rather than using the API. The APIs are all being closed, and that's a shame. This is what some scholars are referring to as the post-API era, but it's still the digital era, and you'd be surprised. It could be that this is a shift that was not a good shift for the platforms. I have a feeling that everybody's going to go to web scraping. It's much harder to control web scrapers. You can't rate limit them. There's all sorts of limitations that you can't impose on a web scraper that you could on an API. So you're welcome to put suggested topics for mapping into the chat. And I'll just take you back through what this looks like when you do it. Basically, you're in an Excel spreadsheet, you press a few buttons, you get this big display. And in this display, there's all sorts of little bits of data that can help you answer questions about who's important and what subgroups are talking about the product or the issue in different ways. This dialog box is perhaps the most important one, and that is the automate dialog box. It is because we can let you check all these boxes and then hit run, that NodeXL can actually automate your data collection and processing. You tell it what you want to know, then you hit automate run, and it generates results. Those results can include an upload to the NodeXL graph gallery, and it can include the creation of a dashboard, especially for Twitter data right now, for exploring your data in a much easier way than being in a spreadsheet. So this is that spreadsheet, though. We have one row for every participant in your network. We have one row for every connection between two people in the network. We can time series analyze your data. We know when the spike was. We can sentiment analyze your data. We call it word and word parametrics. And we can analyze what words are being used. And in fact, you as a researcher can modify the words being used. You can choose different words. We do provide you with a default set of American English positive and negative and angry words. We encourage you to swap in German and British English. You could change this to politically conservative, politically liberal, or indifferent. You could change this to people who like cars that are fast, people who like cars that are cheap, or people who like cars that are safe. your choice, you can change the language being used to analyze the text. So quickly, I'll just show you that what we want you to understand is that messages from social media encode relationships. So what do I mean? Here's a message from social media. NodeXL says, NodeXL is brought to you by the SMR Foundation, true statement. That means that this icon, this is an account, it has a mentions line, and we call these lines edges, an edge connection between one person and another person. What happens when another message arrives? I come in and post one message, 2 connections are formed. Because I say NodeXL is brought to you by the SMR Foundation, and that's me retweeting this account. I retweeted it. But when I did that, the message has another person's name in it, another user account's name, SMR_Foundation. That means I mentioned in a retweet the other account. So one tweet potentially can form a dozen or more edges. One message, many connections. So here's a new message. NodeXL Academy says that today's NodeXL event will be hosted by our network experts. There's Wasim and there's Harold, and then I'm Mark. And you'll notice that this account just appeared and now has arrows pointing out into 3 accounts, 2 of which are new. Another person shows up, tweets something. Notice that this tweet does not have an @name in it. It doesn't have any usernames in it. Therefore, it has a link back to itself. It's called a self loop. And then this account, NodeXL says, thank you. And that, because it says her name and it's in the first position, that's a reply. And then, of course, there can be other networks going on. More than one edge type can exist at the same time. We call those multiplex networks. And that would mean, for example, who follows who. So the follow network is underneath the reply and mention graph. These are layered networks. So this is the way in which a message can become a connection. And what we want to be able to see are the ways in which your collection of connections. And so here we have all of this information, and it's kind of messy, and it's not quite what we'd like to see. And this was the analysis of social media marketing. So what we're going to do is import a recipe. Here's our recipe. This is a file that instructs NodeXL what to do with your data. And then what that does is populate the automate dialog. There's the automate dialog. You'll see that we now have checkboxes down there. I'm going to hit run. And then at no point will my fingers leave my hands. We'll just let it run. It's going to analyze this collection of connections. You'll notice in this format, it's really kind of hard to figure out who's who, what's what, who are the top people, are there clusters, all that kind of stuff. We'll come back to this shortly. So a few things for you to note. First, if you'll visit us over at Eventbrite, I'll share that link. This hour today is only a brief introduction into the kinds of ideas and tools that are available, but we have many others. We're presenting this material in Spanish, Arabic, and English. That might work best for you. These events are ongoing. We do have a 5-day intensive program in the summer and in the winter. Usually the first week of August for the summer school. This year it's July 31 through August 4. And then the winter school is usually in the first or second week of the new year. 2024 is not yet scheduled, but you can see the summer school is scheduled, and then we have more intensive programs. Usually about once a month, you'll find that we will be offering training. Here again is the map of the word marketing. Again, this is from Twitter, and this is telling us things like who the top people are, what the top hashtags are. And we go into great detail. We'll give you all the summary statistics, but then we'll tell you things like these are the 10 most important people, and we'll encourage you to follow them. And so if you care about marketing, these people are the 10 leading voices, the influencers on the word marketing in Twitter as of just a day or two ago. So this is the analysis of 20-something thousand tweets about marketing. And instead of reading them all and trying to get a feel for who are the important people here, Instead, what we are able to do is calculate at some scale who are the important people. You could easily follow them. And then you can use our smart tweet button, which will essentially write a tweet to that person, a rough draft, which uses 2 of the words that they use and 2 of the hashtags they use more than others, that allow you to try to frame and craft a message that's going to be of interest to that person. We then will summarize, as you can see, the top URLs. So what are they linking to? If you're trying to advertise to a group of people, it might be useful to know what websites are they going to. And so then we can also look at not only the URLs, but the domains. So what other websites do they go to? What other hashtags do they use? So if you're looking at marketing, you may be interested to know that social media and digital marketing are words that are commonly used in these tweets as well. Let's go back here, and we're gonna. So these are various kinds of graphs. I'll briefly just say, a lot of people think that social media is kind of a normal distribution, and it's not. This is a perfectly good frequency distribution if you're looking at human height. Most people are not 17 feet tall. Most people are not 1.5 feet tall. Most people are between 5 and 6 feet tall, give or take. But does this shape describe all the things in the universe? No. What about like human wealth? Human wealth. Are there almost no poor people and almost no rich people, and most of us are middle class? No. This is the curve for wealth. Most people are poor. There are a tiny number of rich people, and there's not much of a middle class. I'm an American, I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. So what we want you to see then is that only a tiny number of people are at the center of networks. It's not that different from sort of the vision of the atom, where there are all those electrons flying around, but there's a tiny little fly speck at the middle, and that's the nucleus of the atom. The social nucleus is tiny. There's not a lot of people who have the power of influence in these graphs. And that means that there's a tiny number of people at the center of these things, for good or bad. When we're dealing with disinformation, we're dealing with a dozen people. When we're talking about high quality information, it's usually just a dozen people. So just how social is social media? It's not very social. People don't reply to each other. People are not egalitarian. It's not a normal distribution. It's actually a very skewed distribution. So let's see, I think we want to go to vertex metrics. Where would those be? I think that's right over here. There we go. So here's how we want you to think link. Here's a made up network, synthetic network. We'll call it the alphabet network. But I want you to look at the dots. And what I'm going to do is in each slide, I'm going to change what we're measuring. We are now measuring how many lines touch each dot. Who are the big dots? Well, look here, we've got Z. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines touch Z. A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 touch A. 1, 2, 3, 4 touch O. Okay, so that's how many lines touch you. And let's keep an eye on O there. There's O. It's a fairly big dot when it comes to degree. It has four lines. This is centrality. It's different. O got small. Z stayed large. F stayed large, got a little bigger. What's going on here? Why did O get small? O still has 4 connections. But remember Diane. Remember way back at the beginning of our talk, Diane. Diane had lots of connections, but O has connections, but if we remove the O, nobody is disconnected from anybody. So that means that O has a low measure of how much they are the unique path, the monopoly path, the only way to get there from here. O doesn't have that power. Who does? F. Z, Q, L. Why do those dots have that power? Because if they disappear, other parts of the graph break off and float away. So if F disappears, all of this group of people and this group of people, they are no longer connected to this group of people. Who else has that power? The power to be able to remove themselves from the graph and break the graph into pieces. That's the power of having betweenness centrality. Imagine you've had a dinner party and you invited your friends from church and you invited your friends from work, but they're not the same group of people. And they all show up at your house and one side of the table doesn't know the other side of the table. And who will introduce them to each other? You. But if you're not there to do it, who can do it? So that's what betweenness means. It means being the only person between two groups. So we have other metrics. There's closeness, there's eigenvector, there's page rank, there's clustering coefficient. That's the measure of how many of your friends are friends with your friends, how tight is your group. And then again, degree, just the count of edges. Betweenness, the count of the uniqueness of your edges. And page rank, other metric, I'm not going to define all of these. Closeness centrality, eigenvector centrality, clustering coefficient. Just notice that, like in geography, latitude, longitude, and elevation are three numbers that uniquely identify a position on the globe. A set of network metrics can convey what is the position of this person and what is the shape of the graph. So what I'd like to show you then is that these kinds of tasks are achievable when you analyze a network from, analyze social media from a network perspective. We can tell who the leader of your community is. We can tell what the topics are. We can tell if there is fragmentation or division, if there is a kind of hostile group. When we look at social media for customer support, boy, do we find some things where people are angry at customer support. So the sentiment of the content is also important. But what we're showing you, I hope, is that the shape of the crowd, the overall structure of the visualization of the network tells us something, that there are a variety of these structures. And we have an article here with Pew. I'll share that in the chat. And this article basically says, if you look at social media and of a particular sort, social media that has the capacity to include reply, you may be thinking, wait, is there any kind of social media that does not include reply? Yeah. So email has reply, Twitter has reply, a message board has reply. A wiki page does not. If you edit a wiki page and then I come to it later and I also edit that page, did I reply to you? Not clear, not clear. So wikis are not the same as threaded conversations. They are social media. They're not the same kind of social media. And indeed, we can show you, I believe, let's see, we have wiki networks. So if we go back up into the NodeXL graph gallery and we type in media wiki, which is the type of wiki that we are able to access, here we can see the media wiki map for the word social media. That's an article in Wikipedia. And that article's in here somewhere. And then these are all the other articles that article linked to. And then those articles linked to, and then they've been clustered together so that you can see that there are a lot of Wikipedia pages associated with social media, but they form little clusters around various topics. So media wikis are widely used and are great repositories of human knowledge. And they are very handy when you want to analyze them. Here, for example, is the map of the word K-pop, which the labels are in Korean. I don't speak Korean, so I'm not going to be able to address this, but you can really get a sense of the variety of subgroups related to K-pop. So any topic covered by Wikipedia it has a network and we can analyze that network. But here what you're seeing is that if your network has reply as an edge, then we can see that there are 6 different patterns that can form. Maybe there are other patterns that can form, but these are the 6 patterns that do, in fact, naturally occur. People, without being told what to do, form these patterns. They don't necessarily know they're forming these patterns, but these patterns do form around them. And so what we have are the divided or polarized pattern. This is when political topics are being discussed. 2 groups of people, sometimes more, talk about the same thing, but don't talk about it to each other. The unified pattern, 1 group of people all talking to each other, very rare. There's not that much social in social media. There's not much community in online community. Having said that, though, does that mean that there's none? No. It means like diamonds, they're rare. They exist, they're rare. This is the brand cluster. Everybody is not talking to anybody, so nobody's engaged in interaction with one another, but they're still all mentioning something, typically a brand. Community clusters, brand-like, but with more clusters along the side. And then the most popular and prominent pattern, broadcast. Not social, not interactive, broadcast. 1 account, many people retweeting that account, but notice something about these retweets. These people don't talk to each other. They are an audience, not a community. And then our final pattern, customer support, looks like broadcast, is in fact the mirror opposite. The arrows flow outward rather than inward. This is when people say, my flight has been canceled, my laptop won't work. They're looking for customer support, and then the customer support account responds to them. And again, just because your bag was lost at the airport doesn't mean that you want to talk to me just because my bag was lost at the airport. So again, there are no connections between these people. So this is an important vision of the structures that are possible to see in social media. So again, you start in a place like, let's say, Twitter or wikis, now Reddit, other places, YouTube, and you might start with a search, let's say NodeXL, and what we'll get are a collection of messages. That's great. But what we'd like to understand are the relationships among these people. We'd like to understand who the leaders are among them. We'd like to understand what the themes are, whether or not there was a particular day of the week or an hour of the week where things really spiked. And so you can also find quite a lot of NodeXL instruction in YouTube. We encourage you to hit this link to find all of our content. And of course, we are very pleased to now announce that there is now a Reddit importer for NodeXL. If you're a NodeXL user, you'll find it in the menu. And that it generates pretty interesting results. We can go back over to the NodeXL graph gallery, and now we could type in Reddit. And you're going to see that we are now developing a growing number of Reddit networks. Here, for example, is the map of people talking to each other about the word influencer marketing. Who are the key people in influencer marketing? These are those accounts. So this can be done now for Reddit and for other things. And I'd love to show you this. This is our pivoted view. This is the threaded view. This is the messages go along the top and the replies go below it, and the replies to the replies to the replies. And what does this really show us? Most threads in Reddit are shallow. A very rare number of them are deep, have long threads. And so again, our goal is to visualize social media in useful ways. I think I just shared the Reddit, and then let me share with you an example of what this dashboard experience now looks like. This is a tool that allows you to answer questions about your NodeXL data sets with just a few clicks. No coding, no VLOOKUP, none of that stuff, no pivot tables. It is possible to quickly identify the most important user in the discussion. You quickly see when they had a spike in activity. We can do that over time. We can look at the activity of this discussion. We can zoom in on the spike day, the one day that is the most active day, and so on. So this is a tool intended to make understanding social media as comprehensible as possible, where the end user, and I'll note that, and I've shared the URL, this will work on your phone, this works on your tablet, this works on a Mac, it works on a Linux machine, it works on any machine. Apparently the watch doesn't work on the watch yet, but other than that, pretty much any computational device you have, it's going to work on. And this allows us to essentially short circuit. The NodeXL tool is a Windows only application, but when you publish a NodeXL Pro Insights report, that is across platform. So this object you're seeing here, this is cross-platform. Any device will be able to render this. Being able to do this, however, this is NodeXL on the desktop. This is a Windows only experience. You do need Windows, you need Office. It has to be Office, I think, 2013 or later. So that's anything within the last 10 years of Office will work for NodeXL. So with that, I think...
But Mark, please, one thing. We have the cloud edition available for Mac users. You can subscribe to NodeXL Pro in the cloud, and you will get access to a fully configured Windows machine, which has NodeXL installed already, and then you are also able to use that.
That's a very valid point. So yeah, Mac users, Linux users, you'll see that you get a web page, and in it is Windows, and in it is Office, and in it is NodeXL. And when you start it for the very first time, it actually is running NodeXL ready and waiting for you. With that, I think, Harold, Wasim, any other topics that we've missed? Anything we should add?
No, I think we've covered most of it. Everything else we will present in the summer school if you're interested. And I think now we can answer some more of your questions if there are any.
Certainly the case. Happy to take questions, comments, queries, concerns. And again, the proposition is if you have a topic that you would like to have us map, we will do that gratis. Happy to do so. And we are open to your questions. Let's see, out of here, come back over here. All right. Yes, I see one from Ahmed. Please go ahead, Ahmed.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. My name is Ahmed Dean. I am a PhD candidate at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. So actually, I have conducted a paper in my previous class, Research in Social Data Analytics, with Dr. Lake Khan. And they have used actually Natalic software to extract the data from the Twitter. And then I have used Gephi software to analyze the network. I have never actually used NodeXL, but I'm very enthusiastic to start to use NodeXL these days. I would like to ask, what is the difference, if you know Gephi software and NodeXL? Because in Gephi software, when I conduct my research paper, I have run all the measurement, which is the centrality, the degree. It shows me the between centrality. Also, I can play with the graph, like to choose another graph. But right now, it seems to me that NodeXL is more comprehensive than Gephi. My second question, how can I extract the data or can I extract the data from Twitter, YouTube, from NodeXL? Because actually my first experience with this course, I have to go to some software to extract the data, then to go to another software to analyze the network, then go to another software to do the word cloud or something, But I think NodeXL can do all of that in one place.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. And just my major question, how can I extract the data from NodeXL? Thank you.
Okay, so I think I hear a couple of questions. One, in what way is NodeXL similar to or different from Gephi? Good question.
Yes.
Gephi is a great tool. Gephi has some abilities that we do not, largely dealing with very large scale networks. So there are benefits to Gephi. Key point, NodeXL exports to Gephi. So we interoperate with Gephi, no problem. There is an export menu here, and you can export to GraphML, GEXF, .NET format, DL format, CSV. And I'll note that the data is in Excel, and that means that it's about as exportable as it could possibly be. Any other tool can access these worksheets. So I think the first question was, is there a difference between Gephi and NodeXL? Yes, Gephi has higher scale. What does NodeXL have that Gephi does not? One, it has the ability to automate. There is no automation in Gephi. And what does that mean? It could allow you to generate 100 of these maps with no human intervention. And in fact, we have a machine, I have a machine over here. It makes about 95 maps a day with no human intervention. So that's one thing, automation, that's one big feature. Second, content analysis. There is no content analysis functionality in Gephi. We do have content analysis. And so that is one big difference. 3, time series analysis. We also do time series analysis. 4, dashboard. And so this is an experience that Gephi does not produce. NodeXL is able to produce this. And when you do something like this, the advantage is that you gain some insights into the nature of your data, that you can now go to the location page to see the map. You can't do that in Gephi. You can see the content or the web URLs, those things. The whole concept of content is absent from Gephi. So that's one big distinction. Your other point was, is this in some ways a one-stop shop? Can you do almost everything you want to do with a network here in NodeXL? We hope so. I'll make this point. We export our data easily. We don't want to be a container for your data that you can't get your data out of. And so if there are other tools that you need, great, go ahead and use them. Some people might go ahead and use Gephi or other tools and then bring the data back into NodeXL. We are all about the free and open exchange of the data with other platforms. So I think I've addressed Ahmed's question. Did I miss any part of that, Ahmed?
Yeah, thank you so much. Just the last question, can I extract the data from NodeXL?
Oh yeah, well, like I say, this is a spreadsheet. Can you extract data from a spreadsheet? Yes, it's a spreadsheet. So you can export this in CSV, you can copy and paste. This is a spreadsheet. So the direct manipulation of the graph is very possible. You can just put your hands on it. You can copy, paste, manipulate, add formulas, add columns, delete rows, whatever you like to do. It's a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mark, for your answer. I really appreciate that.
I left you a note in the chat, but I heard that you're at Ohio University. One of the NodeXL users, user is Professor Howard Ted Welzer, H.T. Welzer. If you are interested in NodeXL and you are on the Ohio University campus, I encourage you to seek out Professor Welzer, who teaches with NodeXL. Could be a good resource for you on campus.
I will. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, that was a great set of questions, Ahmed. Let's see if there are other participants today who also have questions. We encourage them. Feel free to use the little hand raise icon and let us know that you have a question. All right. Okay, we'll make sure that we get back to anybody who has not received the license key emails. Let me offer you this. Info@SMR found. Oh, wrong. I sent it to the wrong person. Hold on a moment. Let me get that to everybody. There you go. That'll get to everybody on the team. And we are very happy to hear from our users and offer support as best we can. We're also very interested in meeting with scholars, researchers, and analysts and hearing about the larger purpose of your use of NodeXL. Sometimes we can help with that. We certainly can help NodeXL users connect with other NodeXL users who are doing similar things. And to that end, let me point you to one last link here at scholar.google. If you go to scholar.google and you type in NodeXL, you get really nifty results. In particular, we're proud of the fact that it now says more than 10,000 papers are in the result set that contain the word NodeXL. And if you add a word, you often get results here. We're now down to 4,000, but it now addresses the word marketing more particular. So analyzing social networks from the perspective of marketing decisions. There you go. These are the kinds of examples that might guide your use of NodeXL. You'll be able to see best practices from existing leading users of the tool. Other questions, queries, comments, concerns? Okay. Okay, and I think we've got the licenses are being sent out to those who did not get them. I'll note that you can find us on the web. We're also on Twitter, YouTube, Flickr. We're in Reddit now. We're happy to hear from you via any of those channels. We're in LinkedIn. We're perfectly okay hearing your questions. We are happy to provide the minimal support that is necessary to get you going. Gratis, we're happy to get on a phone call with you. With that, though, let me hand over to Harold to see if he has any final comments and if we've missed anything that's important for our material for you today.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mark. Yeah, like you've just mentioned. So if you want to get in touch with us, we can discuss your data sets. Maybe you have some other tools where you can export data to spreadsheets, where you can identify what is source and the targets, so that we can use very well possible if you run into problems. Thank you very much for coming out.
That's right. That's right. So we're happy to hear from you again. We hope that you found that this hour was a good use of your time. Yeah, unfortunately, at least for me, Harold, your audio is getting all choppy. I'm not sure. But yes, please do take note of the existence of our other events. We'd happily see you there. Having attended this one, I think you are entitled to the buy one, get one. So do contact us if you'd like to get the companion ticket. If you attend one of these things, you get to bring somebody to your next one for free. So let us know if you'd like to be one of those people. You just tell us which event you attended, and we'll add a guest or companion ticket to your attendance at the next event. All right, I think we're about wrapping up. I'm happy to stay here to address any questions you have if you'd like to ask us in this venue. Otherwise, you're welcome to try to get to us via info@smrfoundation.org. We'll happily set up a Zoom call with you to talk about your business's potential use of NodeXL. But with that, I'll wrap up with the idea that, again, we encourage you to think, link, and connect to the power of social networks. Thanks so much for spending your time with us today. And I'd like to express my appreciation to Harold and Wasim for their organizational support. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll just stay to see if there are any last minute questions, but I think we're pretty much wrapped up. Thanks so much.
I was kicked out twice.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, and you got choppy there at the end. There was the unfortunately we weren't able to understand. At least on my side, maybe it was only coming to my machine that it got all choppy. But
No, I think it must have been my connection maybe, but it's new that it completely stops working and reboots. I don't know. That's new.
luckily, with multiple team members, we can always pass the baton between us. So, all right. Well, let's see. Ahmed or Michelle, any questions that you'd like to ask? We're happy to handle them. Okay. Okay, that gets us down to Ahmed. Hello, Ahmed. I'm sure give Professor Welser my regards. We're old colleagues. All right. Okay, I guess with that, we're going to wrap up our session. Thanks again. And then Harold, I'll get you on Skype. All right.
All right.
Off we go. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.